I want to come back to these two very important questions. And, the country has just celebrated the 47th birthday.
It's very young, isn't it? I'm 70, it's 47.
Yes, but we consider ourselves as midlife. And indeed, we are going through a midlife crisis as a country. The whole nations, of course, this has been spearheaded by the government and the PM himself, that what do we want this nation to be? And one of the ministers, in fact, the education minister, Minister Heng Swee Keat, will be chairing the committee. It's going to be a committee made up of several ministers, and this is called the National Conversation. So the whole country will be engaged to ask ourselves, how do we want to bring Singapore to the next 20 years? How do we want Singapore to become in 20 years' time?
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, Tony, even as we are engaging ourselves, and of course one big factor is education, which I'll ask you later on, is especially for preschool education. That is kids around maybe about 3 to 5 years old, somewhere there. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear from you, even as we are going to engage in this whole national conversations to bring a nation. I know Singapore has been embraced as an exemplary city because we are advanced, we are one of the richest in the world, we are very urbanized, we are very advanced in many areas, transportation, finance, every area, but yet we're asking this question. And I think this is good for the country. And you...
It's intelligent.
Yes, that is intelligent. And I'm also very happy that the government is humble enough to ask ourselves, maybe we can still improve. So I want to ask this question as part of this whole conversation, national conversation issues. What do you think, as a country, we should focus on as priorities?
In the conversation that the nation is having with itself, and especially the ministers, the conversation is about what happens in the future.
Right.
And so far, Singapore is doing a wonderful, almost exponential increase in its development. Its skill sets are at the top in the world. And people are saying, well, what's next? Now, the potential of the brain, and therefore the potential of a nation, is infinite. So should we improve? Of course we should improve. We should grow. Really important. So if you take Singapore as a history, 47 years ago, it was a tiny, tiny nation with around 47 years ago, Singapore did an audit on itself. And what did the audit reveal? No gold, no oil, no diamonds, no agriculture, no forestry, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. They had nothing, quote unquote. What did they find? They did have less than 1 million people, less than 1 million brains. And what did they do? Well, that's our resource, let's invest in it.
Right.
So they invested in the capitalism, cap-headism. And they've built and built and built, and the conversation is continuing. The ministers that I hear and meet and monitor, what are they saying? The Prime Minister said recently that children should play. Is that a good thing for a Prime Minister to say? It's one of the very rare, brilliant, intelligent things for a Prime Minister to say. Because when the children play, as Hippocrates said, the most serious thing you will ever see is children playing. Because when you play, you really learn. When you play, you rest and relax. And most citizens and more students are feeling stressed. Why? Because they're not playing. Right. Because they're not taking breaks. And that is an intelligent thing you have to do. The other words, that begin to pop out of the conversation. For example, I met the Minister of Information, Communication and Arts Dr. Isaac. And the word that poured out of him consistently was creativity.
Right.
We must nurture creativity. In the Singaporean conversation, the other word, intelligence, boom, blooms. Creativity, learning,
Right.
thinking. So what age is the world in at the moment? People assume it's in the information age. And because it's in the information age, everybody has to learn information. So the poor little students have to learn all the information. And what is that actually producing? Stress, overload of information. Information overload.
That is
Death
interesting.
by PowerPoint and information
Yes.
and technology.
PowerPoint without the power.
Sorry?
PowerPoint without the power.
The death by PowerPoint.
Okay, right.
Because the power has to be the mental power.
Right.
And so if you actually listen to all the conversation and you watch it, you find that the Singaporean conversation is about the development of intelligence, the developments or the development of brain capital, to have that nation become an even further leader as an intelligent nation.
Right.
And it's gone through, as the globe has gone through all the other revolutions of the mind. And there was the agricultural, and how do people think agriculturally?
Right.
Then, boom, the industrial age. How do people think industrially? And then the information technological age that people think they're in and they no longer are. But how do they think informationally and technologically? And that's why you get death by PowerPoint. And then you have the new age, knowledge age.
Right.
And how do people think knowledgeably? But that doesn't work, does it? Because there's something more important that you need to develop and think about.
Right.
And that's not knowledge, it's intelligence. So the world is now, and Singapore is still leading the world into the age of intelligence. And how will people think in that age?
Right.
What's the word? How will people think in the age of intelligence?
In the age of intelligence.
How will they think?
How would they think?
This is simple. Agricultural age, they will think agriculturally. Industrially, they will think industrially. Information, they will think
Informationally.
Technologically,
Technologically. Of course. Intelligent.
knowledgeable,
Yes.
knowledgeably. And finally, in the age of intelligence, they will think
Intelligent.
intelligently.
Right.
And they will think intelligently about agriculture,
Right.
about industry, about information, about technology, about knowledge, and about intelligence.
Right.
So people are actually beginning to think about everything intelligently, especially intelligence.
Right.
Imagine the brain, the human brain. When you look at it in history, what does it focus on? It focused on medicine, boom, medicine. It focused on poetry, billions of poems.
Right.
It focused on music, millions of songs and musical pieces.
Right.
Whatever the brain focused on, it all
Blossomed.
evolved and blossomed.
Right.
And now, for the first time in history, the planet, all the brains, and all the brains in Singapore are focusing on the brain. And that's going to blossom explosively. It's going to be like a supernova that will radiate the entire universe as a supernova does.
Right.
So Singapore is the leading nation at the moment in that kind of conversation. And the more the conversation, the better.
Better.
And the better that conversation, the better
More-
Singapore.
Yes, more intelligent
And
Singapore.
Henry's
He has a big task. Henry, what is your view on this?
The next 50 years of my work.
Yes. Yeah.